The Congress fought this election with local leaders, it fought with local issues, and it did not, despite, there is a little bit of negative campaigning that always comes in the hustle and bustle of the campaign trail. But by and large, the election was fought on a very different sort of messaging, as evident in the guarantees that they offered, all of which are welfare oriented, but again, all of which addressed particular pain points. It was always clear that the Congress had an advantage in the Karnataka Assembly elections, but when the results came out, they surprised anyone, and I have a feeling that they probably surprised even the party. So it's a clear mandate for the Congress, and there are a couple of interesting aspects to this. The first, of course, is what it means for 2024, if at all it means anything for 2024. And the reason I say if is because if you go back to 2019 and look at the elections that were closest to 2019, that was the 2018 end of year elections, and in those elections the Congress won Madhya Pradesh, it won Rajasthan, it won Chhattisgarh, and together these three states, I think, send 65 members to the Lok Sabha. So when the Lok Sabha election came around, the Congress, which was in power in all three states, managed to win 3 seats, I think, and the BJP won 62. So clearly, a victory in state elections doesn't necessarily mean a victory in national elections, but again, 2024 is not 2019, and I think by now everyone should acknowledge the fact that every election is unique, and it's unique in its own very unique way. So let's look at why 2023 Karnataka was unique. I think it was unique because the Congress fought this election with local leaders, it fought with local issues, and it did not, despite, there is a little bit of negative campaigning that always comes in the hustle and bustle of the campaign trail, but by and large, the election was fought on a very different sort of messaging, as evident in the guarantees that they offered, all of which are welfare oriented, but again, all of which addressed particular pain points that people have. Price rise, for instance, is a pain point, right? And how do you address that? Unemployment is a pain point. And the Congress's problem in the past is that while it has sought to highlight these gaps, because there are definitely these gaps in the BJP's delivery record, its message often gets clouded because it goes off and does something on Rafale, it goes off and does something on something else. And this time, for instance, there was, at the beginning of the Congress campaign, a hint that perhaps they could do it again, because I think the first couple of meetings there was a mention of Adani, and I think it was Rahul Gandhi who in a couple of meetings in Karnataka said that, but after that their messaging has really been very consistent, and they focused on these welfare guarantees that they have. And I think that is a very, very significant learning, not just for this election, but I think it's true for 2024, it's true for any election, state as well as national. I think you need to have a very clear message that has, and it's not I am not the opposition party kind of messaging, because everyone knows you're not the opposition party, right? I mean, it needs to be a very positive, if I can use the word, message of what you will do, either at the national level or at the state level, to address very specific problems that people have. There is a second very interesting facet of the Karnataka results, and I believe that in some ways this points to the limits of Hindutva, that it can go thus far and no further. And you just have to look at the results in Bangalore itself, and you just have to look at the results in coastal Karnataka to see why I'm saying what I'm saying. I just think that it's possible for this particular platform to achieve a certain level of results, but it's not going to guarantee a victory for you every time, because there are lots of other things that need to come into play. The third aspect, and this is completely local, but I need to mention it, is the fact that the BJP was trying to effect a generational change in Karnataka. B.S. Yediyurappa was put in charge of the campaign. He led it from the front. B.S. Bommai might have been chairman of the committee, but it was Yediyurappa who was really there at the forefront, did a lot of rallies and other things, but it was always clear that he was being sidelined. The circumstances of his removal as chief minister, the kind of messaging that came out, the fact that many younger leaders in the BJP seemed to be taking a position that was far removed from Yediyurappa's position, all sent out a very strong message that he was in many ways being eased out, and I have a feeling that probably played a role in the magnitude of the BJP's defeat, because it's a really sharp defeat that they've had. There are lots of other aspects to the local election, but you should read Hindustan Times. It will have all these in great detail. But I want to look at 2024. What does this mean for 2024, if at all it means anything for 2024? The most important thing to remember, and I know this is lazy analysis, a lot of people do that, is that a national election is very different from a state election, and people vote differently in national elections than they do from state elections. This is almost a truism, because in a local election, there are local issues that matter. In a national election, there are national issues that come into play. And I think this is the important part to remember, really. Any party that wants to do well in a national election has to present a nationally cogent narrative which is acceptable to people. For the BJP, this is Hindutva plus welfareism. What is it for the Congress? Is it possible for the party to take the guarantees that it gave in Karnataka, for instance, because they actually address very specific issues related to economic distress, and there are certain segments of population in this country which are in significant economic distress, because as many experts have pointed out, the recovery in India post-pandemic has been very, very uneven. There's a huge demand for luxury goods, but there are also people at the bottom of the pyramid who are really not doing very well, which is reflected in demand for a lot of entry-level products. Motorcycles, for instance, right? Is it possible to create a sort of political plank around that? I think that's the first aspect. The second aspect is one of leadership. There can be no debate about the fact that Narendra Modi is the tallest political leader in the country right now. I don't think the opposition has anyone who comes even close. And I believe the best way to address this problem is to not address it at all. It is something you have to live with. Right? There is Mr. Modi, and he is sui generis. He is unique. You don't have a leader like that, so they just have to cope with it. But the third aspect, and this is the interesting learning for 2024, is to acknowledge that in a national election, because parliamentary constituencies are so much larger, the BJP, because it fights so intensely at the local level, is able to take advantage of a fragmented opposition and in a first past the post system actually emerge on top. And this is where I think it is important for opposition parties to do two things if they want to compete with the BJP. The first one is, of course, have some kind of arrangement between themselves. And the second one is to have the same kind of election machinery on the ground that the BJP does. So what does this election bode for 2024? Nothing directly, a lot indirectly, if you look at the message between the lines. Does this mean the BJP's chances in 2024 are weaker than they were before? Not at all. Sitting here at this point in time, I think it would be foolhardy to say that the opposition can leave alone defeat, can even put up a strong fight against the BJP in 2024, because the party is in such a strong position. But it is also important to acknowledge that there are probably suggestions or indications of things that have worked for the Congress here, which can probably be parlayed into things that could work for it at the national level.